The Atlanta Falcons have made moves already and could be making more. Do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need to get active to keep up in the NFC South during the NFL trade deadline? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation, and welcome to this Tuesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Bucs your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you can get podcasts. And I'm your host for today's episode, David Harrison, on Twitter at dharrison82, one of your hosts of Locked On Bucs, also with James Yarcho, who was live with you yesterday. You can find him on Twitter at JYarcho_Bucs. And real quick, every day, as you already love James, but can we give James Yarcho a little bit of a round of applause? The man is sick, but yesterday, my DC sports requirements, I had the Commanders in the afternoon, I had the Wizards last night, took me away. So he, even though he's sick, he plowed ahead. After he got home from work, he went ahead, he went live for you guys, and he dropped an episode, and you guys came through in droves, and greatly appreciate your support, but also just want to give some flowers to my co-hosts there. Both of us are credential members covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. James for SB Nation's BucsNation.com. I'm doing over at BucsGameDay.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, and we are here with you as a program every Monday through Friday, even if James Yarcho is sick. And as always, we greatly appreciate your support for the program. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins, which would be the Bucs, right? Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. If you're joining me live, go ahead and drop some thoughts and comments and questions if you have them during the broadcast, and I will get to those as I can as we move through the program. If you're not joining me live, still greatly appreciate you for coming through. On today's episode of Locked On Bucs, we're going to do a third quarter preview, and we're going to talk about some quarterback development, some good, some not so good. But first, we're going to talk trade deadline and the potential impact on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today. As this episode is streaming live, it is 11:30 Eastern time in the morning, so we've got 4.5 hours until the NFL trade deadline officially comes and goes, and whether or not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be active. An NFC South division rival has already been active, and it might spark a little bit of reason for the Buccaneers to maybe get on the phones a little bit more than they already are. And of course, I'm talking about the Atlanta Falcons, who have already traded or are in the process of trading. According to the NFL transaction log, the deal is not actually official just yet, but it has been announced that the Atlanta Falcons are trading for defensive lineman Kentavious Street, who's coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles. The Atlanta Falcons are sending Philly a 2024 sixth-round draft pick in exchange. And, of course, this move is made because the Atlanta Falcons recently lost defensive lineman Grady Jarrett, who tore his ACL this past Sunday, leaving the Atlanta Falcons with a need on the defensive line. Now, obviously, Kentavious Street, who did not get a lot of burn with the Philadelphia Eagles, is not an upgrade over a guy like Grady Jarrett, but the Atlanta Falcons looking to plug a little bit of a hole that was created there by Jarrett. Of course, other guys will now move up, as is the saying in the NFL, right? Next man up. Now, Street doesn't just join the Falcons as a name to throw away. He's familiar with the system. He knows the system because he came from the system last season as a member of the New Orleans Saints with now Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen. So not only is this a guy who's fairly fresh, I mean, honestly, not playing a lot for the Philadelphia Eagles sounds like a negative, but it also means he's very fresh, physically speaking, and he's very smart on the scheme. So it's not going to take him a long time to get integrated with the Atlanta Falcons. And so you can expect that by the time the Atlanta Falcons and the Buccaneers see each other again, he will certainly be healthy enough and versed enough to have a potential impact on the game. Again, not a Grady Jarrett, but still something to keep an eye on. Also in the rumor mill, the Atlanta Falcons. So they're still potentially going to make another deal as they have been connected to the Washington Commanders and their defensive end, Montez Sweat, the rumor is, the reports are the Atlanta Falcons have offered a third-round pick that could become a second-round pick if they extend him. Now, of course, that deal is only rumored at this point in time. We don't even have any official reports that the deal is happening or in the process of being finalized. And that could potentially be because behind the scenes, maybe Montez Sweat's agent is talking with the Falcons about a potential extension, because Montez has already expressed his desire to have some stability with his time in Washington. So if he's even going to go to Atlanta, where I guess he's from, right outside the Atlanta area, so he'd be kind of going home in a sense, he would probably want to have a little bit of that security in place, or at least lined up before the deal is made. And if that deal is made, the Washington Commanders, again, get a second-round pick in exchange. So those are the only major rumors. New Orleans Saints not really expected to be big movers during the trade deadline. The Carolina Panthers also not being rumored so far in the trade deadline. Doesn't mean nothing will happen. It just means that the rumors aren't there. But, I don't say every year, but, you all know, if you've been paying attention to the NFL for any amount of time, that sometimes deals come out of left field. The Kentavia Street deal, for example, was something that wasn't rumored, and just boom, all of a sudden there's breaking news dropping on your Twitter timeline or on your subtext timeline if you've taken advantage of that opportunity to be texting with James. But what about the Buccaneers, right? So I know James fielded some comments, questions, ideations that maybe the Buccaneers trade Mike Evans. That was obviously a topic during the preseason, as well as whether or not they should trade Mike Evans, especially as the contract negotiations never happened according to the agent, or broke down according to the team. Obviously, Mike hasn't been traded yet, and Jason Light, appearing on Good Morning Football, essentially said that Mike Evans is not going to be traded. I mean, he didn't say flat out, like, we're not trading Mike Evans, but he did say, I look forward to Mike Evans continuing to produce for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you can't say that and do that and then trade the guy. So Mike Evans is not going to go anywhere, whether that disappoints anybody watching this or listening to this or not. That's going to be for the individual person to react to. Me personally, I'm happy. I want to see number 13 catching passes for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until the day he retires. So that's what I want to see for Mike Evans and from Mike Evans. But that doesn't mean the Buccaneers won't necessarily be active, right? Todd Bowles already kind of said, like, they'll answer the phone, they'll talk to teams and all that stuff, but it doesn't sound like they're being super aggressive. But there are a couple of moves that I've got my eye on that I wouldn't mind the Buccaneers making, and of course there's salary cap considerations and all that stuff, but we all know the cap is fluid and can be manipulated. But one of the players I got one player on offense, one player on defense I'll drop here for you, and by all means leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments here. But something that's interesting to me is Las Vegas Raiders, I almost said Los Angeles Raiders, which is really going back. Las Vegas Raiders receiver Hunter Renfrow. So if you remember, right, the team had Russell Gage. The Buccaneers had Russell Gage, and he was supposed to play a really big role on the team before his injury. And then he goes down. And the question is, how do they replace Russell Gage? Well, they got some speed with Trey Palmer. You got some speed with Devin Tompkins and all that stuff. And it hasn't been terrible, necessarily, but Renfrow brings a different dynamic to the offense if you can make a deal for him. He doesn't bring the speed that Trey Palmer doesn't bring the speed that Devin Tompkins does, obviously, but he does bring a little bit of a short area quickness type of guy out of the slot, a scrappy dude, really tough, very reminiscent of Adam Humphries. In fact, both of them came from Clemson. They were buddies. If you remember during the draft process when Hunter Renfrow was coming out, a lot of people in this Bucs circle, including here on Locked On Bucs, we kind of likened him to Adam Humphries, talked to him at the NFL Scouting Combine about that. Just a really, kind of scrappy utilitarian type of dude. And Hunter Renfrow has not been getting used by the Las Vegas Raiders. He's played on about 36% of their snaps so far this season. He's only got 8 catches. And he recently said in an interview that he feels like he can bring value to an NFL team, whether that's the Raiders or that's another team. Now, the issue here is that salary cap number, right? The Raiders had the opportunity to potentially convert some of his guaranteed money into signing bonus, which would then make that more palatable to a team receiving him. They did not do that, so that makes it a little bit harder to work that deal out, but certainly nothing that is absolutely prohibitive. So Hunter Renfrow is a guy that I'm interested to see what happens with him. And again, I don't think the Buccaneers are being super active, but if they decided to become active, maybe he's a guy they add in there with a mix of Trey Palmer, Devin Tompkins, not replacing any of those guys, but just kind of using them matchup-based, situational based, and all that stuff. Another potential target is Patriots safety Kyle Duggar, which I've heard his name pronounced so many different ways. I even looked up a pronunciation guide, and there were literally 3 different results. So hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Now, Bill Belichick said recently they're not going to trade him, but it's Bill Belichick. You know what I'm saying? And Bill Belichick's kind of guy who will say, I'm not going to trade a guy, then trade him and say, hey, coach, I thought you said you're not going to trade him. Like, yeah, well, on Tuesday, I wasn't trading him. Then on Wednesday, I was trading him. I wasn't lying. Things change. So, it's worth the call. If Jason Light is making any phone calls, certainly worth the call. Ryan Neal hasn't been super impressive, you know what I mean? And you hate to kind of bail on a guy super quick. And I don't necessarily think, Kyle Duggar just kind of comes in and immediately, boom, replaces Ryan Neal, but just brings some more competition in there, brings some more depth in there. And it gives you kind of two bites at the apple. Kyle's contract is expiring after this year. So at the end of the season, depending on how things develop, you can kind of figure out where you want to move at that safety position opposite Antoine Winfield Jr. So moves being made by the Atlanta Falcons, who currently lead the NFC South. No moves being made currently by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But is that a reason to panic? I say not, but I'll tell you why. There might be a different reason. I don't say panic, but not be very happy. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode coming to you thanks to our friends over at DoorDash. Did the game just go to a timeout? Then it's time to order in with DoorDash. It's halftime. That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. That's your cue to get ordering. Whenever the game clock stops, time to order in with DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? You wouldn't do that at Ray J. Why do it at home? Order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites. You can order chips, dips, nachos, or everything you need to make your own nachos on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Now, everydayers, I live in the Virginia area. I had to spend the night in DC on Saturday. It's a heavy tourist spot. I found a new spot in DC thanks to DoorDash called Chicken and Whiskey. I got myself a half chicken, a Caribbean coleslaw, some donut churros. So if you're ever traveling, or if you happen to be from the DC area, it's a high tourist traffic area, just like Tampa is. So if you're ever in the area, check out Chicken and Whiskey. You can find it on DoorDash. I did. It was really delicious. They've got all your favorite restaurants if you're local, all the best restaurants if you're not local, stores. They got retail, grocery. All of that's on the app, so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order after you download the DoorDash app and use the code LOCKED23. Again, that's code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. Thanks for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or your first view today and every day, every dayers. Greatly appreciate you coming through like you always do for the program. Football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday. Locked On is going live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Your hosts, Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs are going to break down every game on the NFL schedule, and they're going to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, you get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel, including Locked On Bucs. We got some quarterback developments coming up here in just a second. But first, let's kind of give it a review of the live chat here. Daytona Dad giving a shout out and giving some praise here to James, saying James is the man for powering through and bring us the content. Absolutely agree there. Daytona Dad also saying that, other than the Brady years, Tampa's always been really conservative. And, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. Also, happy Halloween to Daytona Dad and everyone else out there. Sal doesn't want any more free agent wide receivers. Hunter Renfrow is not a free agent, but I get you. You like the wide receiver group. I like the wide receiver group as well. That's why I wanted to specify that Hunter Renfrow can add to, not take away from the guys we already have. Quality linemen. Yeah, I can't remember who the coach is. There was another coach that was asked about offensive lines, players and wanting those guys, and they just kind of said, like, those guys typically aren't available at this point in the year. Someone who might be available, the Denver Broncos are rumored to be, I don't call it having a fire sale, but kind of open to trading pretty much anybody on their roster. Garrett Bowles, left tackle. Now, I know Tristan Wirfs playing left tackle. Luke Gedicke's done pretty well, obviously, at right tackle, so you don't need a tackle replacement, but he's a guy who's looking for an opportunity to be successful. Maybe you cross-train him a little bit. Not a guy you bring in, plug in as a starter, but a guy that you can at least bring in for some veteran experience, leadership, and things like that. I wouldn't call him a target, but I think he's probably the best offensive lineman that could be feasibly available on the open market right now. So if you watch the Buccaneers lost to the Atlanta Falcons, which most of you did, unfortunately, you saw quarterback Baker Mayfield, or you might have seen quarterback Baker Mayfield towards the later stages of the game, messing around with his knee, kind of looked like he was evaluating himself just a little bit. Didn't come out of the game or anything like that, but he was kind of messing with it. Well, he certainly looked uncomfortable. Then on Thursday night against the Buffalo Bills, unfortunately, another Buccaneers loss, Mayfield had a brace on that same knee. So obviously there was something going on. Now, he played through it. Unfortunately, again, the Buccaneers did lose, but Mayfield threw 25 for 42, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 3 times, but he also ran 3 times for 19 yards. So he's moving a little bit. Didn't seem to hamper him too much. But now ESPN's Jeremy Fowler is reporting, quote, Bucs quarterback Baker Mayfield is dealing with a left knee contusion that has caused some discomfort per sources. Mayfield plans to play through it, as he did Thursday, and the hope is 10 days rest before week 9 action helps, but it's something he has to manage. MRI came back clean, end quote, contusion, another word for bruise. The good news there is, again, they had the MRI. The MRI came back clean, so not major concerns there, but anytime you have a quarterback dealing with hip, shoulder, arm-related, knee-related injuries, back-related injury, any type of injury, to be quite honest with you, you obviously have some concerns, and with the team on a 3-game losing streak, that kind of elevates the level of concern a little bit there. Now, the good news is, on top of the rest that Baker Mayfield just got, which hopefully is going to help out really well, the Houston Texans, who the Buccaneers face this weekend, are ranked 24th in sacks per pass attempt, and they're only sacking quarterbacks 6.12% of the time that quarterbacks drop back. Now, if you compare that to Tampa's rates, the Tampa Bay defense is getting to quarterback 6.98% of the time, so that kind of gives you an idea of how much pressure the Houston Texans defense is really generating on a week-to-week basis. So obviously it's still concerning, right? But what you now like, and this is kind of where, criticism of the past kind of comes back a little bit, and that the Bucs have Kyle Trask obviously as their backup quarterback, and he got some valuable reps in the preseason, also got some valuable reps during training camp with the first team. So if for some reason that thing gets aggravated or it gets worse, and Kyle Trask has to come in, he's not doing so cold. He's got some experience. I mean, he's fairly cold, but he's got some experience at least with that unit if he has to absolutely go there. But they also went ahead and revealed, at least to Rick Stroud of Tampa Bay Times, that they will be adding quarterback John Wolford. And again, at the time of this broadcast, not an official move yet, but they will be adding John Wolford to the active roster after he was heavily pursued over the weekend by a lot of NFL teams, including the Los Angeles Rams. So there's a lot of quarterback stuff going on out there in the NFL today. Some injuries are happening. Some guys are underperforming. Some concerns happening. So the Los Angeles Rams coming after John Wolford. Wolford played for the Rams during his time before joining the Buccaneers. He was teammates with Baker Mayfield there for a short period of time, but he decided ultimately to not join the Rams active roster, stay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So now the Buccaneers are going to reward that loyalty by adding him to the active roster. Not only does it make him available for play, but it also makes him eligible for better pay. And of course, everybody here could use a little bit more money, even guys who already make a lot of money. Now, I don't think the John Wolford move, specifically or particularly, is a sign of how the Buccaneers feel about Baker Mayfield's health. I really do think that's mostly just, hey, John, we love you. We like you. We like what you have going on. We appreciate your loyalty. And basically, John, and his agent said, hey, guys, Rams and whoever else, the report is that there were a lot of teams after him. They're all offering me active spots in their roster, basically giving you guys a chance to match. They said, we'll match it. And so that's what's going to happen now. But what's interesting about it is, remember the emergency quarterback rules. Now, John Wolford, he could be a game day inactive, but he'll still suit up. And if for some reason that Mayfield knee injury that he's dealing with bugs up and Kyle Trask has to come in the game, now you can make John Wolford active, take Baker Mayfield, make him inactive. And now you still have 2 quarterbacks potentially available to play against the Houston Texans this next weekend. So a lot of interesting things moving on there with the quarterback situation. So the trade deadline is hours away. We're going to get over and look at the latest news, or we've already looked at the latest news, rather. We're going to take a look at the third quarter of the Buccaneers schedule. But before we do that, let's get some quick questions here from Benjamin Rosa. Any moves being made, Ben? No, as of right now for the Buccaneers, no moves being made. And again, I've been on the air here now for about 20 minutes. So if something has changed, someone in the live chat, let me know. But you never say never, right? The Buccaneers basically answering phones. Hunter Renfrow and Kyle Duggar, safety and wide receiver, are 2 things that are two offers that I brought up. Daytona Dad wants to know my thoughts on James' trade proposal for Penny. Look, here's what I'll tell you. We've talked extensively about this situation with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am all for, within reasonable prices, reasonable asking prices, all for doing anything to bolster that situation. So that's where I am on that. Montez Sweat went to Chicago Bears, Captain Peebo. So there's some breaking news. If that's accurate, Captain Peebo, I don't know how legitimate of a reporting source that is, but Montez Sweat going to Chicago Bears. apparently. And James in Ohio wants to know if it's difficult to work with someone as handsome as James Yarcho. And yes, it is. It's very distracting. Also distracting is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' recent 3-game losing streak. Will they get over that losing streak in the third quarter? I'll tell you that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Bucs brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-point underdogs on the road this weekend against the Houston Texans. So if you think they're going to pull off that upset, sign up to FanDuel, drop that $5 money line bet, and if the Buccaneers prove you right, you'll get your $6.30 winnings. Plus, you'll get another $150 in bonus bets. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is incredibly easy to use. So is the website. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, of course, money lines, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off your NFL season betting midseason. Still time to get in there. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. All right, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Captain Peebo coming through with the news updates as we're live here on the channel, saying ESPN is reporting Montez Sweat headed to the Chicago Bears. That's really interesting because Chase Young was the rumored defensive end to go to the Chicago Bears. Who knows? Maybe the Atlanta Falcons will pivot now and go after Chase Young. But for now, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have avoided, not really that having any control over it, but have avoided a little bit of a bullet with Montez Sweat not joining the NFC South. Larry Fisherman says he used to work with James, and James is a pretty handsome fella. So there's another. James getting all kinds of love on this episode. Well deserved. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3-game losing streak coming out of the bye week. Not at all what anybody wanted, including them, including us, including you. And can they get that corrected starting this weekend against the Houston Texans? Spoiler alert, yes, they can. Now, this isn't the crossover episode. James will have that with Cody of Locked On Texans here later on this week. I'm pretty confident that James is going to predict the Houston Texans will lose that game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will win, but I'll let him speak for his handsome self. I'm going to tell you right now, I think the Buccaneers can and will beat the Houston Texans, and that does two things. Not only does it break the 3-game losing streak, right? It gets the team back in the win column, which is always important. And it makes the team 500 with 9 games left to play. So there's still more games to play. Like, we've gotten to the turnaround point of the season, but there's still more room to run than we've already run. So even though they've stumbled a little bit, there's still plenty of time to get your feet under you and do some good things. So even more important is that this weekend the Saints are home against Chicago Bears and apparently Montez Sweat. So that kind of changes things a little bit, but I don't think that it's going to change so much that the Saints become underdogs in that game. The Falcons are home against the Minnesota Vikings, who just lost Kirk Cousins and are rumored to be in the potential quarterback shopping market. Both the Saints and the Falcons are currently favored to win their games according to FanDuel. So if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you absolutely need to win this weekend's game just to keep pace in the NFC South and not lose a little bit of ground. If anyone can make a rookie quarterback like CJ Stroud look like a rookie quarterback, it's Todd Bowles, of course, in his defense. So this is a big game the Bucs have to win, or again, they will risk dropping back multiple games in the NFC South race, and that is not something that you want to do. Next up after Houston is a home game against the Tennessee Titans, and the trade deadline certainly going to impact this one. I don't think Derrick Henry goes anywhere, but if he does, then it has to be a win for the Bucs. If the Titans are playing without Derrick Henry, the Bucs have to win that game. I love Tajay Spears, their rookie running back out of Tulane, but he's not Derrick Henry. They got to win that game. Even if he doesn't go anywhere, even if Derrick is still playing with the former Houston Oilers, then I think the Buccaneers could still certainly win that game as well. Now, after that gets a little bit tricky, right? They're at San Francisco on the road, and then they face the Indianapolis Colts as well on the road. Now, we'll see where the 49ers are 3 weeks from now, but that defense is still going to be scary. Kyle Shanahan is going to have time to figure out what's going on with their offense and all that stuff by the time Tampa Bay gets there. And, of course, it is an East Coast to West Coast trip. So that's still dicey. So I think I'm still going to lean the 49ers on that. We'll talk about it obviously 3 weeks from now. And James Yarcho is going to the Colts game. And I don't believe James has ever been to a Bucs game in person where they have won. So this is where we're going to take some flowers back from James. But I do think that streak ends. So I think the Buccaneers beat the Colts. They beat the Texans. And I think they can beat the Titans. So that gives us a 3-1 Buccaneers third quarter, which puts them at 6-5 with 5 games remaining, or however my math is mathing. 6-5 with a good amount of games left to play. I've got the Saints going 2-2 in their next 4. I've got the Falcons going 3-1, which means Atlanta could be 7-5. Tampa could be 6-5. New Orleans could be 6-6 after each team's next 4 games. That's not a bad situation to be in, especially when you figure that the Buccaneers have back-to-back NFC South contests to start the final stretch with a home game against Carolina and a road game against Atlanta. So circle December 10th, my sister's birthday, because that's the day the Buccaneers can get that loss back that they should have never taken in the first place. And potentially, if everything works out the way I think it will, retake the NFC South lead on that day if they just handle their business and maybe even get the benefit of playing a down 49ers team. So for all those reasons, a little bit of concern on Baker Mayfield's knee. The Atlanta Falcons so far not bringing in Montez Sweat. So we'll see what happens there. Don't trade Mike Evans, which again, Jason Light confirmed, all but confirmed, but basically confirmed that they're not trading Mike Evans, which they shouldn't do as well. So that's the latest and greatest from Buccaneers land. Lucas says, if we don't secure a solid second running back, just chalk all those games up as L's for us. Lucas, I share your frustration, as does James, on the running back situation, but I don't necessarily think they're all L's if you don't secure another running back. But of course, you would love to see them secure another running back. Coming up tomorrow, James and Evan Klosky will be back for WTSP Wednesday. In the meantime, if you got questions, you can leave them in the live chat, leave them in the comment section, email them to lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com. And now you can text directly with James Yarcho of Locked On Bucs. Just go to yesterday's episode to get all that information. But I'm pretty sure join subtext.com/lockedonbucs. It might be Locked On Buccaneers. But go back to yesterday's episode. James Yarcho hopefully shared all that information with you. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter. James is at JYarcho_Bucs. I am at DHarrison82. The show is at Locked On Bucs. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind, fire the cannons. We'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.